All right, Texas is continuing its fight against the federal government and in courts trying to make sure its border laws stay in place that would allow local law enforcement, if seeing people cross the border outside of ports of entry, suspected illegal immigrants into this country, that they would be able to arrest and deport those people. It is in the courts right now. On Tuesday, we now know that, I should say on Tuesday, briefly they were allowed to have this allowed to start. But then another federal court, an appeals court, said no. While they are going to decide their case, they're going to wait and see. At least seven states are already considering bills. Arizona has been one of them. The flurry of laws and proposals, I'm going to read very quickly from this story from the New York Times. The flurry of laws and proposals meant to crack down on undocumented migrants entering the country is part of the extraordinary mix of immigration, litigation, and politics that is producing legal gridlock in the courts and confusion at the border. So you can kind of guess where the person that wrote this story leans. That's, I'm trying to see, and I don't know this person that wrote it, if he is an op-ed writer or if he is a reporter. Because if he's a reporter, that's opinion right there. That is editorializing on an issue, that it's causing confusion at the border, tying up the courts. I would say a backlog of millions of people awaiting asylum hearings is clogging up the courts. I would say confusion at the border happens when record numbers of people cross the border. I would say the confusion is caused when 500,000 undocumented children, unaccompanied minors cross our border, and about 20% of them are unaccounted for. Some are saying the number is higher than 20%. Unaccounted for. We don't know where these kids are. So you can, I guess it all depends on the spectrum by which you look at this. This is where the problem lies. And so 7 states, all 7 states must be horrible states because they dare want to do something that the federal government isn't doing. And the idea that someone say it's just going to make it worse. Okay. That shows where you lie on enforcement of the laws. This is a Washington Post story. Democratic cities that welcomed migrants are starting to roll back aid. In recent days, New York and Chicago, 2 of the nation's largest cities, have instituted substantial changes to their shelter policies. In Chicago, the city began evicting migrants who had overstayed a new 60-day time limit, saying it did not have the resources to meet their needs. So as things continue to spiral out of control, you've got people protesting in the streets of Cuba, in its second largest city. Their electricity is being shut off for up to 18 hours per day because it's controlled by the government. And so they're losing power for up to 18 hours per day. It threatens frozen food and refrigerated food and keeping it fresh on an island where you know how everything is controlled. They still use ration books for food allotments. And you also now have the uprising in what's happened in Haiti, where that country, many are saying, is spiraling so out of control it may be taken over by gangs in the coming days. The state of Florida, Governor DeSantis is already saying that they are cracking down on Haitian migrants. Now, the Haitian population, as it makes its way to South Florida, a big part of Miami is called Little Haiti. There is a very large Haitian population in South Florida already. But now the Haitian migrants that will be coming over, people that will be coming in illegally, leaving that island, getting into Florida, DeSantis is saying, Martha's Vineyard, we are going to bus them to Martha's Vineyard. The federal government's not going to stop this from happening. The federal government isn't going to end this. You're not going to put this on the people of my state. We're going to share the wealth in this. If it's happening to us, it's going to happen in other places. Now, you may disagree with it. You may think it's a horrible thing to do. But when Texas and Arizona and Florida was doing this at the very beginning, making sure that migrants were not just being flown and bused by the federal government to certain places, that sanctuary cities that have been self-proclaimed sanctuary cities like Chicago and New York and Washington, D.C., and the state of Massachusetts, which has a mandatory shelter law, that when those states were there, they were told, okay, here they come. And right away, whether you agreed with it or not, it served a purpose. Because now you have the leaders and the voters in those major sanctuary cities screaming about changing the policies and yelling at the federal government to do something about it. So it served a purpose. There's no doubt about that. No doubt that it served a purpose. Here's one last thing on this topic, at least for right now. We'll talk about this later on as well. Video shows an illegal migrant crying while being rescued by authorities in Texas. This guy was abandoned by the cartels in one of the most desolate areas in Texas, and he thought he was going to die. And when they finally found him, he was in tears because he thought he was going to die. This is what happens at the southern border of the U.S. Whether people like this or not, this is what's happening. So it is ridiculous to me, at least, that we are talking about the people that are creating these laws to be to blame. I'm not saying you should agree with the law. There are many people who don't think SB 4 should go into effect. There are people in Arizona that don't think we should create our own law like that. But to hold Arizona legislators accountable and say, that's horrible, well, they are reacting to a situation that is overwhelming. I invite any of you don't even have to go to the border. Look at the pictures. Do an accurate search online. I've done this before. I love Arizona. I truly fell in love with Arizona the very first time I came here. And I love it for its geography, for its beauty. The desert is a beautiful place. When you go up into the White Mountains, you get into the pine forest. It's a beautiful place. The Grand Canyon is just, you're awestruck when you see it. Google trash at the Arizona border and just look at the pictures of what's left behind by people crossing into Arizona. If you're an environmentalist, you tell me why this isn't your number one cause. You're going to save squirrels in the mountains and you're going to do these other things. How is this not the hill that you're going to die on for your country?
Thanks for watching the Mike Broomhead Show. Tap to watch the first season of Amazing Arizonans, a KTAR News podcast. You can also click the button in the middle to subscribe.